In this new world of work, this age of disruption, this brawl with no rules, it's about being distinct or extinct. What are you doing to make sure you stand out in today's sea of sameness? What overt benefit do you bring? What dramatic difference do you offer? And what is the reason for others to believe in you or your team or your department or your organization? It used to be that the big ate the small. Now it's the fast, the agile that eat the slow. That applies to businesses as well as to individuals. Those of us, again, that adapt, that thrive, that learn, that continually innovate will thrive and excel in the new world of work. And those that don't or resist change will find it very difficult in the years to come. Let's talk about a few quick examples that might hit home for some of us. Think about Blockbuster. Years ago, it was a very highly successful organization. Many organizations wanted to benchmark them, wanted to emulate Blockbuster and be like Blockbuster. In fact, for those of you my age, you might remember how we used to get in our cars and drive on to a brick and mortar building, a Blockbuster store, go inside and search for 10, 15, 20 minutes, find a video, jump back in our car, drive home, watch the video, get back in the car, drive back to Blockbuster, return the video, get back in our car, drive home, and finally relax. Who ate Blockbuster's lunch? They didn't see the writing on the wall, and it was Netflix. Blockbuster was digital revolution. At one point, Blockbuster had the opportunity to purchase Netflix for $50 million, and they passed on it. And if any of you follow Netflix closely, you know that Netflix's market value right now is close to $400 billion. Blockbuster didn't see the writing on the wall. They didn't see the transformation that was coming. And now they're basically extinct. I think they have one store remaining in North Pole, Alaska, if I'm not mistaken. Another example that you may be familiar with is Kodak. Kodak was another worldwide leader, and a lot of companies emulated Kodak, wanted to be just like Kodak. And for those of you not my age, we used to have these things called cameras. We had to put film in them. In fact, we had to go and purchase rolls of film at a drugstore or somewhere else, and they would allow us to take 24, 36 pictures. And after you take the pictures, you had to take them back to a photomat or a drugstore and have them developed until you could finally look at your pictures. And if you consider the number of pictures that are on your cell phone or your smartphone right now, think of the difference in technology. What's interesting is back in 1978, Kodak had an employee by the name of Steve Sasson, and Steve invented digital photography. He took it to the senior leadership team at Kodak and said, this is the wave of the future, this is where we should go. And in not so many words, he was told, no, we're going to stick to our knitting, we're the film folks. And we all know what has happened with Kodak now. Rochester is basically a ghost town. A third example is Nokia. Many of us are familiar with Nokia. Years ago, they were the leader when it came to cell phones. They led the world in cell phone sales and technology. They did not see the transition coming to smartphone technology. They missed the boat, and they are actually on the verge of distinction, trying to remain competitive and stay in the market. Who knows what will happen? As we studied these three companies, as well as dozens and dozens of others that fell into the same traps, we found that there were some common factors as to why they were no longer able to stay competitive or to achieve the results they had historically. The first was they were too short-term focused, only looking out 6 to 12 months at a time, and not looking out further than that into significant changes in marketplaces or demographics or technology. The second was they were very much inwardly focused primarily on tweaking and tinkering with internal processes and systems to get a little bit better every day, rather than looking for ways to reinvent and redefine their marketplaces. The third was complacency and status quo. They very much clung to the status quo and were complacent. The interesting thing when it comes to top performing organizations is sometimes, because they're top performing, they tend to develop a little bit of an arrogance that nobody can touch us. And that's a very dangerous place to be. The fourth reason was they had the wrong ratio when it came to managing versus leading their organizations. These organizations had about a 75% focus on managing versus leading. And in the top performing organizations throughout the world, The opposite is true. There's a 75% focus on leading versus managing. And we're talking about leading, we're talking about inspiring, visioning, motivating, strategizing. That's what top performing organizations spend 75% of their effort doing, and 25% of their time on managing. Both are required, but in top performing organizations, you'll see a much higher percentage on leading. The fifth reason was they were all very much reactive versus being proactive, reacting to what the market was doing rather than leading. And they were risk averse, very much averse to taking a risk or doing anything different. And as we've mentioned, in addition to these examples, there's dozens and dozens of other examples that exist out there. Here's a slide with a bunch of companies that might fall into the same category as the ones we've just discussed. So we are in this age of disruption. Things are changing dramatically as we move into the future. And as we looked at what's happening in this age of disruption, what we call the new world of work, we would say there is what we call the relentless seven-sided pincer movement. And these forces have coalesced and combined and have joined forces and are coming together, and they are gunning to take your job as an individual. They're looking to displace your department, or they're looking to reinvent or completely destroy your industry. So let's take a quick look at the seven-sided pincer movement, these seven forces that have come together. The first is ERP and SAP. Think of the software that has eliminated over the last 20 years or so hundreds of thousands of white-collar jobs because those jobs could be replaced by software. The second is white-collar robots, things like automatic teller machines, lights-out warehousing, things like that. Think about 20 years ago going into a bank, and you might find 20 bank tellers inside a bank. Now, if you find one or two, you're lucky because most of it's done through technology or white-collar robots. Amazon is looking to open in the next couple of years 3,000 stores that will not have a human being in them. You can go into the store, purchase what you want. Actually, you don't even need to purchase it. You pick it up, walk out, and somehow you're billed accurately. McDonald's is making the transition to kiosks and to robotics within their stores rather than hiring additional human beings. Globalization. There's an abundance of talent out there right now, and they are only a mouse click away. Outsourcing. Often better, faster, and cheaper, and they're usually the experts because it's all they focus on. How many companies do you know of that outsource IT or HR or even payroll? The next is the internet. It's a bye-bye brick and mortar. For example, banking is necessary. Brick and mortar banks are not. You can do most of your banking online. Travel is necessary. Travel agents aren't. Retail is necessary. Malls are not. I was at a mall 2 weeks ago. It was like a ghost town. Disruptive and destructive competition. Think of the impact Uber, Airbnb, Netflix, Amazon have had upon their industries. And who knows what's next. There are college students ensconced in their dorm rooms right now trying to reinvent all of our businesses. And finally, artificial intelligence. There are AIs out there right now performing surgery on people. If surgeons are expendable, we're all expendable.